Shalom, my bitches. Myandis here with NFY, bringing you Ingenuity, Climate Change, by Crumb JD. Otar Tolle sits watching the fire. His name means steals from lion, or at least it's understood that way. From is implied by the construction of the words. And Otar doesn't quite mean steals in the same way it will tens of thousands of years in the future. His society has a few dozen people, none of whom own more than 20 different things. Thus the sense of it is more like what children's do with each other's toys, takes without asking. For that matter, Tolle is more than just lions. It's also a color, a golden brown, the color of the lion's pelt or dry summer grass. It's not a coincidence these things are the same, and Tolle's tribe, the true people, don't think it's a coincidence, so they encode that knowledge in their speech. Otar Tolle is a true name, an adult's name, that was given to him when he passed the trials of manhood. As such, he really does steal from lions. In fact, he taught the trick to his cohort of warriors, and now, at need, they all do. It came about like this. During the hot, dry season, the true people eat very well. The young men of the tribe can cut an antelope out of the local herd. They then work in shifts, chasing the beast in great loops across the hot plain, keeping it ever moving, and throwing rocks to weaken it and slow it down. During the chase, the slower members of the tribe stay near the river to keep the prey from reaching its cool water. Eventually, the antelope tires, falls, and the tribe feasts. But the ember from the maker's fire wobbles in its eternal circle around the world. So there's a second season, and that is cool and wet. The antelope don't tire so easily when the sunlight is soft, and there are marshy patches from which they can drink. It generally takes a lucky shot with a stone to bring one down. The tribe eats poorly of wild berries and tubers. Tolle's grandfather said his grandfather said it wasn't always this way. Then the ember was always hot, and the tribe could always catch the antelope. The tribe's shaman says this is to be expected. Embers cool down after all. When Tolle learned his trick, he wasn't concerned with that. He just wanted to eat. And that was where the Otar came in. Lions don't chase their prey. Instead, they lie in the Tolle-colored grass and spring out in a flurry of sudden violence, capturing an antelope in a few dozen strides and dragging it down. During the wet season, their prey grows fat on the moist grass, and young antelope are born. So the lions eat very well. One day, Tolle, who still wore his boy's name, saw a sleek, well-fed pride lying in the sun by the remnants of their meal. And he saw those remnants included several meaty haunches which had yet to be eaten. Now the true people and lions have a sort of armistice. A lion can kill a man, of course, but a man can often injure the lion in the process. Its fellow beasts won't bring it food while they recover, so it amounts to the same thing. Men don't approach lions, and lions stay away from men. As such, the boy imagined that if he went up to the lions, they'd jump back, and if he took some of the meat, they'd ignore the offense. So, he walked up, and they jumped back. Then he took meat, and they let him. After that, the tribe ate well for a night, and they had one more way to get food. All of this Tolle considers as he sits by the fire and watches the unmarried women dance. He is somewhat worried about what the true people will do when the ember grows yet colder. Surely the lions will grow tired of having their food taken. Can a man learn to hide in tall grasses and bring down an antelope in a few strides? It seems unlikely. Men run far, but not so fast. So how will his children's children's children get their food? Then he notices Pretty Frog is looking at him. She is a plump and smiling girl, and by the standards of the true people, this makes her very attractive. Tale is smart enough to realize that for his children's children's children to need food, he must first find a wife and have some children. He puts aside thoughts of hunting from the small grass, and considers how he will move when the men join the dance. It is later, and the world grows colder. Another man sits in front of another fire. This fire, however, isn't on a plain with happy people dancing around it, but rather at the mouth of a cave. Or perhaps the small hollow doesn't deserve that name. It formed where dirt eroded from a ceiling of overhanging stone. It's no more than a dozen feet deep, and too short to stand in. The man's name is Draith. It doesn't mean anything. The A is hard, and the R is rolled if your tongue can manage it. Behind him there's a cough. It's his youngest child, and Draith worries about her, so he sets a bit more fuel on the fire. It's known that heat is good for a cough. His wife told him not to worry, but he does anyway. It has been cold. Not hard water cold. Draith has only seen that once in his 17 years. But smoke breath cold, and Draith's mother died during a similar period when he was young. She'd had a cough, which had grown worse, then liquid, and finally she turned blue in the hands and lips. It wasn't known why this was bad, or how to fix it, but it was the end of her time in the world. In his mother's day, members of the clan had generally had a single pelt to warm them in the cold. Of course the clan had hunted and eaten as much as ever, but they hadn't known the trick for keeping pelts around for long periods. In those days, hides had been scraped clean, then used. They would last for a while, and then they would dry and crumble, or if it was wet enough, they would get the white slime. It was known that once the slime was on a hide, it shouldn't be used. If one did so, every scratch they took would fester. The spirits of illness were drawn to the slime. In those days, members of the clan shivered under a single hide when it grew cold. That hadn't been enough warmth for Draith's mother in her illness. After his mother's death, Draith had been given the hide she'd used at the end of her life. The hide had almost immediately taken the white slime. Draith had found himself furious with the hide. It hadn't warmed his mother, and it was useless to him. So he peed all over it. It wasn't a reasonable or practical thing to do. However, he'd been driven by his rage and the lack of a target for his anger. He'd peed on the hide, then he'd rolled it up in a tight wet roll so he could pee on it more later. He'd drunk more than he needed to so he could pee on it more frequently. He'd kept it up for months. In short, he'd pursued this campaign of urination with a fervor that suggested he actually believed he could hurt an inanimate thing. Strangely, quite the opposite had happened. On the hide, the white mold had dried and flaked off. Yet the hide hadn't begun to dry, not even when Draith stopped his treatments. Instead, it had become more flexible and softer. It didn't degrade. And a new thing was known. Behind him, his youngest coughs again. It's an easier sound and less urgent, but it's loud enough to wake Draith's wife. She sits up in the pile of hides under which the family sleeps. Sweat is beaded across her brow and breast. She looks at Draith and then reaches out to feel the child's head. After a moment, she pulls her hand back and speaks softly so as not to wake the young one. "The heat is out of her. Will you leave that and come to sleep now?" Draith considers for a moment, but he knows his wife is right. He banks the flames and then joins his family in the pile of cured furs. It is later, and the world has grown colder. Winter is coming. Alarn isn't worried about that. His name means mighty hunter, or great, large, superior hunter, perhaps. It wasn't a true name, given to him after someone knew how well he'd actually hunt, but it proved to be the correct name anyway. That season he'd killed many of the sheep that his clan, the Wolf Brothers, follow. As such, his wives had dried a great deal of meat for winter, and his children have gathered many edible roots, seeds, nuts, and berries. Alarn has even succeeded in trapping a live sheep. It's tied up outside his family tent, and now his children gather grass for it, so it remains nice and plump, ready for eventual slaughter. His family will be fine when the snow comes. Alarn watches a sheep caught below him in the bushes that fill a small hollow between two hills. The sheep ran there to escape his spear, and normally that would have been the end of the chase, as the creatures are quick and clever in the brush. However, no amount of cleverness can prevent accidents, and this animal has gotten its horn stuck. Now Alarn has a choice. He can spear the creature from above and take it back to his family for preservation, or he can try to capture it alive. As Alarn contemplates the trapped sheep, the wind causes the brush to rustle with a dry sound, and the dog that has been traveling with Alarn through his hunt settles to his haunches to rest. The dog is startlingly similar to the animals which will continue to live with humans millennia into the future. It knows its human is thinking about something, and that might take a moment, so it uses the time to relax. The advantage of taking the sheep alive is that it can be butchered at need, even if that need comes deep in the winter. There would be more food that way, as fat is lost when the meat is dried. However, he already has one living, trapped sheep, so does he need a second? If he tries to trap it, he might lose it, and there will be some risk in the attempt. The sheep are not for the most part dangerous prey, and that's why the Wolf Brothers hunt them. Still, if he gets close enough to tie one up, they can bite. That might break his skin and cause a wound that could take sick. They can also kick hard enough to break delicate bones, which would hinder future hunting. He lifts his spear, preparing to throw it. His dog stands. He doesn't need the extra meat, not really. Even without the first trapped sheep, there's enough dried food to get his family to the spring lambing. A thought strikes Alarn, and he stays his hand. The thought is like something from outside of himself, like the lights that flash in storm clouds, or perhaps like something falling out of a tree and onto his head. Might the sheep in the brush get a lamb on the one back at his tent? The one here is male, he can tell from its horns, and the one at the tent is female. That would be enough if they were dogs or people, and he sees no reason it should work differently for sheep. Yet, if it works like that, he can surely trap the lambs after they're born. That possibility makes Alarn's mouth fall open slightly. What might he be left with then? Perhaps 8 sheep trapped outside his tent next fall? Such a thing is unheard of. His family might make it through the winter on that alone. It would be a bit hard for his children to gather the grass for so many, but they'd find a way. Yes, that wealth was worth the risk of the animal caught in the brush. Alarn lets his spear fall. The dog is surprised and gives him a funny look. Alarn doesn't notice. He strides down the hill towards the small sheep to change the world. It is later, and the world is colder. Humans travel through a land that will someday be known as Bering. The people call it the New Land, and they call themselves the One People. Despite that name, they have no more relationship to the true people than all humans have to each other. In their legends, the sun isn't an ember, but rather something bioluminescent, like the lights of fish in the ocean. They don't particularly associate it with heat. They have certainly never chased prey to exhaustion under a hot sun. In fact, the land has very little in the way of life or prey. It's an expanse of dull-colored grasses, small hardy grazing creatures, the large white bear that eats the grazers, and the vast swarms of mosquitoes. Nothing large or nutritious grows in the ground, because it's always frozen a few feet down, and spends much of the year under deep snow. To the one people, the seashore is life. They hunt creatures that come up to the land to rest, to mate, or warm themselves. The one people's main strategy for catching these creatures is that sea creatures are slow and clumsy on the land. Hunted meat represents almost all of their diet. Organ meats are highly prized, and they're eaten raw. Meat eaten raw gives the one people vitamins they need to avoid scurvy, rickets, beriberi, pellagra, and dozens of other conditions. Not that they know this, of course. To them, it's just the way one eats. The one people think they lead a very easy life in their cold, empty land. They are traveling this way because their wise woman had a vision that this new land would be unoccupied, and thus rich. It has proven to be a true vision. The clam beds are never picked over before they arrive. Dry fuel can be gathered without much effort. And none of the local prey knows to fear the human form or flee from human hunters. Families grow in size due to this abundance, and the one people spread ever further in the empty land. It is later, and the world is warmer. Billions of humans live in the world. They occupy shining cities of glass and steel. Their ancestors might briefly mistake them for gods, but only briefly, for everything that has changed, much hasn't. The old lusts and passions remain the same. Laughter and love, anger and pain. These are untouched by the passage of years. The people in the shining cities face dangers, struggles for limited resources, and even worrying about the future temperature of their world. They also observe the world around them. They plan, they study, they grow, they learn. Nothing is ever really guaranteed. But the future looks bright. Alright guys, I hope you enjoyed that one. This is honestly one of my favorite HFYs ever. I've said that about 7 different ones here so far. Yes, I do get that. All of these are my favorites. And that's why I asked to see if I can record them. That's why I bring them to you. If you enjoyed it, leave a like. If you have something you need to tell me, leave a comment. And if you want to hear more of me, go ahead and hit that subscription button and the little bell along the side that puts my videos directly in your subscription feed. Alright guys, have a nice one, y'alls.